मित्रों, आइए फिर से हमारे इस चैनल में थ्रू लिटरेरी लेंस। विनोद जी, आपका स्वागत है।
बहुत बहुत नमस्कार राजेश जी
जी
और सभी सुनने वालों को भी मेरा प्रणाम। दोस्तों, थ्रू लिटरेरी लेंस पर हम किसी न किसी साहित्यिक रचना पर समालोचनात्मक दृष्टि डालते हैं और मैं सुनने वालों को बता दूं कि यहाँ पर होने वाली चर्चा किसी लेखक, कवि यानी व्यक्ति केंद्रित नहीं होती है। हम उस रचना पर बात करते हैं और रचना की खूबियाँ, खामियाँ और उसको अलग अलग दृष्टिकोणों से देख परख करके और सुनने वालों तक पहुंचाने का प्रयास करते हैं ताकि वे साहित्यिक चीज़ों को महसूस करें, अनुभव करें, समझें।
बिल्कुल, किसी व्यक्ति विशेष की इसमें कोई बात नहीं है, बल्कि साहित्य की बात है, और वो भी साहित्य जो हमारे जीवन का अंग है। साहित्य केवल साहित्य हो, उन्हीं कसौटियों पर उसको तौला जाए कि उसका संवाद क्या है, देश काल क्या है, केवल इतनी बातचीत नहीं होती। हमारी बातचीत होती है कि वो हमारे जीवन से किस तरह हम उसको जीवन से जोड़ के देख सकते हैं, अनुभव कर सकते हैं।
Rajesh ji, if I am permitted,
Yeah.
we look at any creative work,
Yeah.
the way it responds to different narratives and different discourses that have been there for a very, very long time. Because any good creative piece of literature is timeless, right? And it is universal. Therefore, it has to touch upon many narratives, right? And we have to dig out those touches of the narrative which are embedded in the work itself.
Yeah, definitely. As it is called, it's a polyphonic way of looking
Yes.
at the things. You know,
Yes.
it's a polynarrative.
Exactly.
What is it's called? Milan Kundera also calls in his novels. The novel always is a polynarrative.
And some of the pieces of literature, they operate at many levels, right? And you need to be aware of those levels and the layers. Only then you can get to understand and enjoy those subterranean current. And some of the writers, some of the poets really are great in the sense that when they speak even about an ordinary event or incidents,
Yes.
it is elevated to the great piece of art and the universal significance.
Definitely.
For example, when today
Yes.
we have brought one Hindi story by
Kamleshwar. Yeah.
And Kamleshwar, he is the celebrated writer of Kitne Pakistan.
And we have also discussed Kitne Pakistan on our channel. If you would like to go back and listen, you are welcome.
Yes, and before we will proceed to look at the story, this story is written about Bhopal gas tragedy.
Yes.
And
One of the biggest industrial accidents.
It was the night of 3rd December
2nd and 3rd December, intervening night.
1983.
84.
84.
Yeah, 84.
Yes.
And the gas, methyl isocyanate MIC gas, leaked out of the Union Carbide plant in Bhopal.
That was an American company. Would we like to remind
Yeah.
our viewers and listeners.
In the dead of the night, entire Bhopal city was sleeping.
Estimatedly more than 3 to 4,000 people died, but the number
That's the official count.
Yes.
And people were asphyxiated even in their sleep.
Many people
out.
Yes, many people got injured. They lost their eyes. Many people suffered from number of diseases like cancer and many skin diseases.
Many people were blinded, right? So it was one of the horrific
Tragedies.
instances of industrial
And to write
accidents.
a story, and really that too artistic and literary story on the effects of this gas tragedy, I think it requires the genius of Kamleshwar.
Kamleshwar, definitely. Vinodji, as you say, literature partakes of reality, but it is imaginatively transformed and it dwells deep in the emotional recesses
So
in an
what
artistic
I'm trying
manner.
to, yes,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Rajesh, what I'm trying to say, if it is some emotional event, if it is something where the emotions can easily be evoked, you can write something, some beautiful piece. But to write a story about this Bhopal gas tragedy, which is a very prosaic event that way,
Yeah.
right? You can say an industrial tragedy, and you could give political responses, you can give social responses, but to give literary response to such an event, I think this is something that we need to take into account.
And a literary response of this caliber, which is strides across multiple levels, multiple domains of existence, be it the personal domain, the systemic domain, or even the cosmic domain.
And the way the writer has woven the plot of his story, the way he has created his character, it is quite artistic and admirable. In the center of the story is one person who has gone lunatic on account of of the horrific impact
of
that he has received from this Bhopal gas tragedy.
He has forgot his name also. He is hard pressed to remember his name, his wife's name, and he remembers it bit by bits and pieces, that events of that day.
Yeah, but he's not able to remember of his early life, and very often he visits this mortuary, right, where the dead people are, dead bodies are kept.
The time there, and from here itself, the story begins in the mortuary, and Kamleshwar takes us to the different level. He says some of the dead bodies don't talk.
Yeah,
some do.
Some do.
So what does he mean by that?
Perhaps he means that the people, when they are alive, but still they are dead.
Yeah.
And some dead people, they are still alive, because the events may end for a particular person, and the person may be dead, but the same events, same circumstances, same social milieu, same political reality continues to be there for million others. So whether you are dead or alive, some are dead, some are alive. Therefore, the reality has to be perceived in its holistic manner.
And mind you, if anybody feels that, okay, a dead body is lying, how can the dead talk? Then I'm sorry, friends, the literature is not for you.
Yeah, definitely, because you cannot impose this the so-called physical reality on the artistic pieces. You need to imagine many things. It's a psychological reality.
Don't the dead of Hiroshima talk still?
Yeah.
Don't the dead of Bhopal talk still?
Don't you think the dead of the partition tragedy still continue to be there, and they are still alive and talking to us?
They are haunting the borders.
Yeah.
So this is the first step towards understanding literature.
You have to liberate yourself from your ordinary reality, and you have to place yourself in the reality, which is idealized reality, as Aristotle calls it.
Definitely.
And then he makes a lot of visits to this mortuarium, and finally he is driven out from there by the watchman.
He roams around the city. Perhaps he knows the city. He knows Bhopal, but Bhopal has forgot him. This is a very subtle satire on the depersonalization of the victims of any tragedy. They are reduced to merely a number, not even a name.
Yes, nobody knows their name. People only speak, media only speaks that how many people died, how many people got injured, and how many crores were given as compensation. These are the only figures that remind us of the gas tragedy. But this lunatic person, right, he awakens our sensibility when he says, who will provide cure for the injured lungs? Who would provide cure for the lost sight in the eyes?
Court is deliberating. Court is providing for all the cures. Now, we are constrained to think here, Vinodji.
Yes.
Tragedy of such a magnitude happens, and then we go to the courts, knock the doors of the court for getting our basic dues, getting our existence itself.
Here, the writer raises a very important question. These kind of tragedies come all of a sudden, and therefore our curative measure should also be a sudden. But if we adopt the traditional systems, be it political system, be it a judicial system, so how can you address the problem that erupted all of a sudden unintentionally, and you are trying to find the solutions within the fixed parameters of the established systems? Here you need to go out of the system. Here you need to take some revolutionary decision. Here you need to take some sudden decision in order to provide the solution to the problem.
And courts are not at all. I mean, if you suffer in such a gigantic tragedy, and then for getting your claim, getting some money, you have to knock the doors of the court. What kind of system
and
is
even
this?
if you get the compensation, for example, the tragedy occurred in 1984, and the first installment of the compensation, which was estimated at rupees 750 crores,
Crore, yeah.
was dispersed in 1989.
89.
So what about these 5 years? How these people are expected to survive? This is the question that this lunatic, this insane person raises when he speaks in bits and pieces.
Actually, the response should have been by the government. It should have been a blanket response. Anybody suffering in any way in such a tragedy should have been accorded succor, you know.
Right.
But it went to this, everybody approached the courts, and then courts clubbed the cases and they were fought out in the courts. So it was all absurd.
And it's not the question that this particular character in this story goes insane. If you look at the subplot of this story, then there is a big doctor who sits in the court backyard of the hospital. He also has gone mad. So people, those who are sensitive enough, whether he's a common man or a big doctor, can lose their mind when they really feel the magnitude of this kind of tragedy.
And the ramblings of the big doctor in the backyard of the hospital, they are also very suggestive, and they convey a lot of things.
Exactly. And one, he has a lot of bottles, right? As the pathologist has a lot of bottles to collect your
bodily fluids. So he collects tears,
and he says, I will find out the cure to your disease. No, this is very important. When you weep, Rajesh, when you weep because you suffer from something. You have got a sorrow, you feel pain, and that's why you weep.
And you weep, Vinodji, when you have no objective correlative left with you. You cannot do anything else.
And we cannot help but admire this doctor, that he says, I will analyze your tears and find out the cause of your pain. How suggestive the action of this doctor is. This is very important. Although he has lost his mind, but he has not lost empathy for somebody who is in pain. I think this is something very great, very, very great, insight that this story is capable of putting forth.
And then this anonymous person, he even runs away from this big doctor, roams around the city, comes to his slum.
After the gap of 4 years.
4 years. And he's accosted by a person who remembers him. Then he's found out, tell me my name.
Yeah.
He says, tell me my name. So this is the very fundamental question. Tell me my name. See, even the fundamental question of philosophy is, who am I? Right? Now here, in the aftermath of this tragedy, people are so uprooted in a way that they have forgot actually how the life is supposed to be lived.
And the name of any person is his
Primary
or her
identity.
primary identity. So look at the identity crisis that this lunatic person passes through. He's not able to recall his name. So even the name has been taken away by the aftermath of this tragedy.
And I would say it has been taken away by the impersonal forces of industrialization,
Yes.
as well as the impersonal forces of social structure and bureaucracy.
Yeah, because this story is a great satire on the political, social, and judicial system.
Yeah.
Because these are the three systems that are expected to respond, and
Even on the medical sector, because now he's beyond medicines.
he's beyond medicine, because he makes a reference that he does not have to care for the food, because people, they distribute free food, and they also distribute medicine. But the medicines are no longer helpful for him because he has gone beyond
So all the
medicine.
systems put together are utterly inadequate.
And Kamleshwar raises a fundamental question, that why we have created these systems after all, for whom these systems work.
Definitely. And then in the story, when he comes to know his name Mushtaq, his wife's name Shabnam, he tries to go to home, but he's told that his wife is no longer there. 1 year, for 1 year she waited, but now she sits in the brothel, nearby brothel, and he is heartbroken and rushes back to the big doctor.
Yeah, no, this is very important.
Yeah.
This U-turn to insanity.
Yes.
Is very important. One of the ends of this story could have been that he remembers his name, but as some of his acquaintances tells him that he's a Mushtaq,
And he comes to terms with, he can find his wife
he
also.
can find his wife, and
Or
he can
even if
start his life again.
Does not find her, but he can restart his life. But no.
No, because you know, the solution, even the possible solution for this kind of tragedy is improbability.
And this brings us to the very delicate and very important aspect of this story. The name itself, Dalchini ke jangal, and his wife, she is fond of, in her maternal place, those jungles are there in Tarai, and she is fond of that smell. She remembers that smell in Bhopal also, in the pre-tragedy life, right? She pines for that smell, and she can't find
fragrance,
it.
that
And when
fragrance
she
of
is
Dalchini there says,
cooking the mutton, she is cooking the mutton on that fateful night. The tragedy strikes, the accident happens, the gas leak happens, and then everything is lost. In his mind, the blood fountains ooze from his mind in a way, and चरखियाँ चलती हैं, खून के फव्वारे उड़ते हैं.
You know, the sparks of the fire are sprayed all around in his eyes, and his eyes burn, and then his lungs burn. So this refers to the immediate impact of the gas leak that
As well as
millions of the people suffered in Bhopal.
The persisting psychological impact. He's almost a schizophrenic.
Yeah, because schizophrenic people can feel intensely that these bodily sensations.
Yeah, and then I would, Vinodji, impute the symbolism of the civilization on Shabnam. How come? Shabnam is his wife. He's rooted to the life through his wife. They have a very happy life, both of them. All of a sudden, it is devastated in this mechanical tragedy, gas leak. And then when he comes back, he doesn't remember her name, his own name, his name also he's told, her name also he's told, and then he wants to go to her. He asks his friend, come to my home, Shabnam will make tea, right? This is return to the civilization. But then all of a sudden the jolt of his life comes that Shabnam is no longer there. She is in the brothel, right? Now, Dalchini ke jangal, primitive civilization, primal civilization.
Or that that kind of life where we were not really largely influenced by these
adverse forces of industrialization, urbanization.
Because there is a juxtaposition, at least in his mind, between the jungles of Dalchini, which symbolize innocence and simplicity,
and herds of the deer roam around there,
and the poison which is oozed out by these industries.
At least, okay, she comes to Bhopal, she pines for it, but she is happy in Bhopal, right? So civilization is okay, urbanization it can take in its own stride. But when urbanization or industrialization is stretched to such gory heights, the gas leaks and Chernobyls and Hiroshimas happen, then the civilization is disintegrated, it turns into a whore, a prostitute.
Yeah, and another very important point of this story is when you look at United States or other European countries, they have industrialized beyond a point which is not basically permitted.
Even the talk of degrowth, so-called degrowth.
They have carried out their greed for the money to such an extent that they cannot see anything but they want to earn the profit. And the writer clearly says that this Union Carbide company was set up in India so that they could experiment with the different dangerous gases. And
at least the people feel so in the story.
Yeah, people feel definitely, because and perhaps there may be a partial truth in this, because even today Americans are at the top when we look at the carbon emissions.
Yeah, carbon emissions. And if you live in the American way, Vinodji, it is said that you will require 7 Earths.
So we hope that this discussion would be heard by some of the Americans at some time, and it should prove to be an eye opener to them. Because in the story, this insane man, when he toward the end of the story, he says that one plate of mutton is 40,000, and half a plate 4 lakh, and one fourth of the plate 10 lakh, like that. And he says the flesh of the human being is less costly,
11 rupees
only. And then he says the heaps of money, American heaps of money. So Americans try to understand the value of everything, even of the human feelings or human tragedy or human death, only with a reference to money. So this is something that needs to be understood and condemned, because if the money is the only value left and if there is no other value in this world, this type of world is really a deadly and dangerous world.
Everything, if it is simply monetized, including human life, including human emotions, then there is no hope. If the money is the common denominator of all the things, as unfortunately it is happening nowadays, beginning with America and Europe also, gradually it is spreading.
Yeah, we have accepted the grand narrative of capitalism.
Yeah.
Everything is to be measured, whether it's a productive, whether it produces money, whether it has a value, monetary value, and if it does not have, then it is simply pushed to the margin.
How many Americans are really aware of this Bhopal gas tragedy? How many have really heard of this Bhopal gas tragedy?
This is very important because it is one thing to register progress in science and technology, but it is really at altogether different thing to adopt humanitarian values and humanitarian outlook, because primarily we are not machines, we are human beings, and therefore you simply cannot throw the human values out of the window and start living like machines and simply start talking in the terms of money, or start talking in the terms of loss and profit, as if there is nothing is beyond this cycle of profit and loss.
I think, Vinodji, to teach this also some machine has to be developed which will simulate the connectivity. If you are doing certain activity,
yes,
all the hidden connections or explicit connections should be simulated. Then only perhaps they will be able to understand. Perhaps a simulator, connection simulator.
Yeah. So coming back to this story,
Yeah.
this is one of the few stories that could evoke this kind of
because it operates in all the four levels of literature,
yes,
which we say. Reality, of course, it partakes of reality.
Yes.
It is imaginatively transformed it.
Yes.
And then it dwells deep in the emotional life of at least some people, that big doctor, this Mushtaq, his wife.
And it is capable of evoking emotional response from the readers as well.
And it is crafted very artistically.
So emotion, imagination, art and reality. These are the four important
All four elements of literature are adequately found in this story.
So we really congratulate this great writer Kamleshwar,
and he is one of the not few, I would say, one of the many writers which have not got the Nobel Prize because they were from Asia.
Exactly, because this is again prejudice that works, right? Because Asian writers, perhaps they are not translated into English and world languages. Perhaps this can be one of the hindrances.
Yeah.
But after all, when we look at their work, literary works, they deserve greater admiration, greater recognition.
I mean, Vinodji, people have got Nobel Prizes who are just describing the routine life in Japan.
Oh yes.
Nothing more than that.
So friends, once again we would like to remind you that this channel is not there to admire somebody who has got a prizes, and this channel cannot condemn because you are a very local or a simple or ordinary writer.
Yeah.
No, even the Nobel Prize winning writers do not have anything significant to offer. This is pretty sure, and therefore this channel is impartial channel in its discussion. We are not the part of any group. We do not have any hidden motives. We are not running this channel to earn money.
And this discussion reflects our perceptions. You are free to argue on points.
Yes,
definitely.
This is our perception. You may not like or dislike any particular writer or the piece of writing, but if we like, we admire. If we do not like, it's not a personal prejudices. We are trying to discuss, clearly bearing in the mind that this is a literary discussion, and we are well aware of the canons of the criticism, and we are well aware of the tradition of the aesthetics, because Rajesh ji and me, we have been trained in literature, psychology, philosophy, social science and many other disciplines.
Definitely.
So friends, do respond to our discussion and tell us how do you like this discussion, and read Kamleshwar's works. Bye bye.
Bye bye.